All right, good evening. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Because if I use the microphone, let me tell you what it's like. Can you hear me now? No?
Try to get this.
We don't need it anyway. Hello? Can you hear me now? Do we need the microphone? All right. If you have trouble hearing me, I'll go to the mic.
Down a little. Turn it down a little.
That's all right. We don't need that mic. Can you hear me in the back all right? No?
Good enough.
Just turn it down a little bit, David.
How about now? Is that all right? All right. All right. Vegetable gardening in Central Texas. What we're going to talk about tonight is quite a few things. And this class is interactive. It's participatory. So I'll be asking you questions as we go along. So if you're up front, lucky you. How many folks first time vegetable gardening in Central Texas? Okay, good. Well, my name's Dave Slaughter. I'm a master gardener of Bell County. I've been through the advanced training for vegetable gardening, but I think more importantly, I've grown vegetable gardens since I was about 8 years old, in a variety of locations, in a variety of states. And I still learn something every day I'm in the garden. So you never quit learning. So who had a vegetable garden this year? What'd you grow?
Some tomatoes, bell peppers, and I have does a rogue melon count?
A rogue melon.
Yes.
I never heard of that variety.
It was in the compost bin and I moved it, so.
Ah,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, volunteer melon.
What did you end up with?
I don't know, there's still 3 melons sitting
Still
there.
growing,
When will
okay.
it be ready? I don't know.
All right. How'd your tomatoes and peppers do?
Terrible.
Terrible. Anybody else have a garden this year? How's your garden do? How's your garden do?
Well, my old cherry tomatoes did great.
Okay. Everything else failed? Not?
Not so good. I
Really?
did have some cantaloupe.
Yes, ma'am.
It was beautiful until the hail came and beat it.
Oh, hail. We're going to talk about hail there in a little bit. Okay. Anybody else? How about somebody in the back had their hand up? What'd you do in your garden? All the way back there?
Hardened up. Got flooded out. Hardened up.
Okay. Did you have anybody have any problems in their garden besides hail?
Rain.
Rain? Too much rain? Yes.
Snail, grasshopper.
Snail. Well, we had a lot of rain, so we had a lot of snails. Okay. All right. Who's ever heard thunder in February means frost in April? True or not true? How about Epsom salts are going to make bigger blooms and greater harvest? Yeah? Your grandmother used to tell you that? How about eggshells and blossom? Everybody know what blossom rot is? You know, when you're growing this great tomato and all of a sudden you get this little brown spot on the bottom side of it. You put eggshells in your garden, that's going to fix it all, right? How about pennies? Natural fungicide. This is actually true. 40 years ago, when pennies were copper. Pennies are zinc now. So that's not true anymore. How about aspirin improves everything because of the salicylic acid in them. Coffee grounds lower your soil pH, which we need because our pH here is probably 7.6, 7.7, 7.8. But again, not true. Rusty nails adds iron to your garden. Not true. Wrong kind of iron. That's a ferrous oxide, you want a ferrous sulfate. So that's not going to help you one bit. Who's grown zucchini in their garden before? How many people have grown their zucchini and look at it one day and then the next day it's like, oh my God, what happened? Like that? Anybody experienced that before? Probably not to that extent, but that's got some truth to it. Okay, when you walked in, you should have got 4 handouts. Should have had a handout, kind of a monthly calendar. Doesn't tell you when to plant anything, but it does tell you what you might want to be doing in your garden at that time. You should have got a handout on a bunch of references that we're going to talk about at the very end, and there's some QR codes about soil testing and the disease handbook. You should get a planting guide for Bell County, when you should be planting what and when. And again, this is a guide. Everybody's area is different. And if you look at this guide, it'll tell you this is for the Belton zip code, and the last frost date, according to the Farmer's Almanac, based on the last 32 years of history, is 22 March. And we know the Farmer's Almanac is always right. And if you look down in November 11th is our first frost date for this zip code here in Belton. Again, just a guide. And then everybody should have got a multi-page vegetable selection varieties that are good for Bell County. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. So, what are we going to talk about tonight? Okay, our agenda. Everybody know that woman right there? Where'd she go? There she is. Okay, planting. Can't have a garden without doing some planting first. We're going to talk about plant grouping, days to harvest, some ways you might want to combine things or not combine things, seeds and transplants, or seeds versus transplants, a garden layout, nutrients, the elements for growth. We're going to talk about 8 nice insects that like our garden. We're going to look at some diseases that kind of affect all of us. And sometimes what we think is a disease is, all vegetable gardens are annuals. They don't live that long. They die, and that just happens. Spring versus fall gardening, and tips to improve chances for success. Now, this photo right here, that plant is not on your variety list. That is a Bonnie's Best cabbage from Lowe's. The woman is not Bonnie. Her name's April. But these are Bonnie's Best cabbages. They do real well. And if you got here early enough and you saw the film cycling through and through and through, those are all photos at the Clean Municipal Court Garden. And you probably recognize some of these people that are scattered around the room that work there. So, planting. You're going to grow your first vegetable garden in Central Texas. Who's the garden for? Is it for you? Is it for your two 15-year-old twin daughters? Are they going to help you in the garden? Probably not. Where's the garden going to be? Is it going to be in your backyard? Or is it going to be on an empty lot that's 3 blocks down and 2 blocks over? Probably won't be using it too much if it's that far away. Water. What type of water? Do you have access to water? You plan on using just rainwater? Are you going to be using municipal water? We're fortunate here in Bell County. Does anybody live not in Bell County? Where are you from?
L'Oreal.
Okay, well you're using basically the same water. Our 2 lakes, Belton and Stillhouse, they're high in pH, but they're not, they're good water. Some counties fight with salt all the the time, like College Station where Texas A&M is, they have a big salt problem. We don't have that here. Sunlight. Vegetables require roughly 8 hours a day. You can get by with 6. Especially this time of year, if you get some afternoon shade, you do it great. Terrain. Are you trying to grow a garden on a slope? Or do you have flat ground? These are all things you need to consider. What type of garden do you want to grow? A modular garden, also called a square foot garden. Containers, a traditional garden where basically it's just kind of laid out and you're growing things in rows 3 feet apart and you have your drip irrigation system all lined up. Or vertical, are you growing up? There's a space. Drainage, what kind of soil do you have? What's the texture of your soil? Are you full of clay? So when it rains, you just have a pool of water over the top of the ground. You're going to want to add a lot of organic material to try to compensate for that clay, or do raised beds, or containers, or something to that effect. Wind. Can you shelter this area from wind? Vegetables don't like a lot of wind. And also, who has taken a soil test before? You don't count. I'm not talking about the ones you buy at Walmart and you put a little dirt in a tube and shake it up and is that yellow or is that orange? Is that, what color is that? I'm talking about a real soil test from a education institution. Yes?
Years ago, and they may still do it, but the agriculture extension agents would take a sample and send it off and then give you an analysis. Do they still do
Okay.
that?
You do that on your own now. And then that last sheet of paper, QR code, is a direct link to the soil testing lab at Texas A&M. You don't need anything. You take the soil test, it explains how to do it. If your garden is the size of this room right here, you're going to want to take about 8 to 10 samples. You want to put them in a bucket, mix them all around, put it in a baggie, big baggie, and send it off because you're going to prepay online before you go there. If you don't want to do that, we have forms over at the help desk and little pint-sized bags that you can put them in. But if you can do it all yourself at home, why would you want to mess with that? And then plus, if you pay online, everything is there. They have your correct email because they respond to you in about 2 weeks with the results. And then we're going to look at a soil test here shortly. Okay, what are we going to plant in our garden? Are we going to plant seeds? Are we going to plant transplants? Are we going to plant a combination of seeds and transplants? Are we going to transplant something out of the compost? Or are we going to move something out of the compost pile and just kind of move it into the garden and see what we get? I would assume you're not the only one that has done that. I've done it. Okay, seed purchase. Where are you going to buy your seeds? Are you going to buy them locally here, like say Belk Feed in bulk? Or are you going to buy them at Walmart or Lowe's? Are you going to use the seeds that you purchased 3 years ago that have been sitting out in the garden shed for the last 3 years? I wouldn't even waste my time with them. If you're going to keep your seeds year over year over year, I'd recommend putting them in your refrigerator. For one, it's good temperature, plus it's dark. They like seeds. But if you're concerned about the viability of your seeds, there's 3 tests you can do. One, you can do a cut test, which basically destroys the seed, so I wouldn't recommend a cut test. But basically you're cutting it in half, you're looking to see if the endosperm fills out the shell of the seed. You say, yep, it did, it's no good now. Or you can do a float test. You can drop your seeds into a container of water. If they sink, they might be good. Now if you're growing milkweed, that'll never be true because milkweed seeds don't sink. Some other seeds don't sink either. The best way to do it is if you do a paper towel test. You dampen a paper towel, spread some seeds out on the paper towel, fold it over, put it in the baggie, and let it set for a couple of days. Yep, keep checking it. Maybe in about 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. you don't have anything, little roots coming out after about 2 weeks, chances are you don't have a good seed. But if you're buying your seeds brand new and it says packaged for 2024, 2025, whatever, chances are the seeds are going to be good. If you are growing seeds by hand, not purchasing transplants, and if you're trying to grow them yourself sitting on the windowsill, or if you have a greenhouse, you want to make sure you use a soilless mix. You don't want to use the bag of Miracle Grow, because that has soil in it, it has fertilizers in it, and it has some other stuff. This is a pure mix. This is what Texas A&M, the Master Gardener Handbook, recommends. This is a 50-50 mixture of grated peat moss and vermiculite. This is what vermiculite looks like in its raw form. And I'm just spraying these out so nobody breathes in the fumes. This is vermiculite. Basically, that's a mineral that's been heated up. It holds water, very good holding for water retention. This is, that's pure light. That's volcanic rock. It's been heated up to very high temperatures, and it creates that. So vermiculite keeps the ground moist. Perlite kind of keeps that air space, because everything needs air. Even though it's underground growing, it needs air. Now there's all kinds of containers to use if you're going to grow your own seeds. My favorite is a silicone-based container, because you can wash it, and when your wife's not home, you put it in the dishwasher on the top rack, and it cleans it out and sterilizes it. Or you can use these little bricks. They make them out of peat moss, they make them out of coconut coir. Now, we're not going to have a discussion about peat moss versus coconut coir, but I'm sure everybody's heard that, oh my God, there's a shortage of peat moss, we're going to run out. Well, maybe in the next 1,000 years we might, but I don't know. I don't think so. And if you use a coconut coir, it's going to create some other problems for you too. Or rock wool is a nice thing to use. I use rock wool all the time for propagation. The thing with rock wool is you got to soak it in some kind of acid first. Or if you're really environmentally conscious and you don't want to use any kind of pots or anything, you can use these things called soil workers. Basically, you put these in soil. This won't work, but you put these in soil and you make blocks. I like these small ones for like when I'm doing turnips at the community garden, because they're too hard to transplant any other way. But you can grow 50 to 100 of those for a row very quickly and very easily. And then they make different sizes as well. When you're watering your plants, if at all possible, bottom water. Put some water in there, put your thing in there, and ideally you would leave one of these blank, so then you can see how the water is being absorbed and how far it's going up. Top watering, as we're going to talk about, whether we're talking about growing seeds or whether we're talking about in the actual garden, just leads to all kinds of problems. And it's a good time to start fertilizing. Once you start to get the first set of leaves, when you start to see some green, start introducing a very low dose fertilizer, like a 1-2-1, and that'll help them out. Okay, grouping your plants. We have heavy feeders, we have light feeders, and we want to look at days to harvest. Some of our stuff requires a lot of fertilizer repeatedly. And I should have moved onions out of light feeders, because onions are a heavy feeder. We we fertilize our onions every 2 weeks with nitrogen. You'll see in the photo here, where I have my bamboo stakes, I like to mark, like where my cantaloupe is growing, because as it always gets higher and, well, not quite that high, but higher and higher and higher, you don't know where your cantaloupes are. Chances are the raccoons will find them, so it won't be a problem. But if you're growing in your garden, you especially want to pay attention to days to harvest. You don't want to grow your radishes next to your cantaloupes. Because typically, radishes will grow to mature, they'll mature in roughly 25 to 30 days. Well, cantaloupes will take closer to 100 days. And we're going to do a garden layout, and I'll show you why. Now, everything you grow in the garden needs nutrients. Theoretically, it's available in the soil already, but chances are it isn't. And then when you're growing stuff, and then when we look at our garden layout, we want to look at families of vegetables, like tomatoes, potatoes, peppers, eggplants, tortillas, tobacco. They're all a member of the nightshade family. So if you're growing tomatoes in row 1 this year, you don't want to grow any of the other like plants in row 1 next year. You want to alternate them. This crop rotation is very important for disease, nutrient availability, etc. But soil nutrient is very important. There's basically 16 essential nutrients that we use in our soil. Now, if you go to the University of West Virginia, they say they have 17. The University of Southern Florida has 13. Texas A&M says 16, so that's what we're going with, because that's our sponsoring institution. And if you look at that in the blue, those are the structural elements: carbon, the oxygen, and the hydrogen. Those are in the air. The 3 main elements that everybody's probably familiar with is NPK. You have nitrogen, you have phosphorus, and you have potash or potassium. You'll see that just about on every bag of fertilizer you buy. If you're buying a bag of ammonium sulfate, it'll be 2100. If you're buying a bag of garden mix, it'll say 13, 13, 13. So that's what's important. But those are the primary macro elements. And then there's several secondary macro elements: calcium, magnesium, and sulfur, and everything else is considered a micronutrient. But how do we know what kind of nutrients we have in our soil? Soil test. That is a soil test from Texas A&M. And there's a couple things that we need to look at. You see at the very top, where it says pH results, 7.4. Okay, the critical element on that, or the critical limit, ideally vegetables should grow at 6.5. That's not going to happen here in Central Texas, unless you're growing in containers, or you're growing in raised beds that you did everything, put all the soil in yourself. So remember that 7.4, and then if you go down, you can see nitrogen, which is typical. Everybody's soil is probably going to be on the low side of nitrogen. Here they're telling us to add 0.6 of a pound of nitrogen for every 1,000 square feet. If we go down a little bit further, take a look at calcium. If you look at the soil test, we're in great shape on calcium. So we won't have a problem with blossoms in rock, will we? Because our calcium is in good shape. Just kind of remember those 2 figures when we take a look at the next thing. So now we have our baseline. We know we have 7.4 pH, and we know we're good on everything. We're a little bit shy on sodium, but that's not too important. We're going to get that normally just by normal watering. So we're in good shape except for nitrogen, and we're in great shape for calcium. But now let's look what happens. 7.4, if you go up right here, go on up, you'll see our calcium levels all of a sudden become somewhat depleted. And we're pretty much all guilty of it. As master gardeners, people say, well, I have blossom emerald. First response we tell them is, well, you're watering wrong. You're not watering consistently. You're not using a drip system. So it's your fault because you're not watering the right way. But if you look at the pH, our soil depletes our calcium. It depletes a lot of other things too. And you can see we're just on the shy side there. We're starting to get into the yellow one, calcium. A couple things you can do. You can always add a gypsum or a calcium sulfate if you have a big problem with blossom end rot, whether it's tomatoes, peppers, squash, and see if that makes a difference. Maybe you are watering incorrectly, where you're just shooting the water out and just spraying over the top of your plants. That's a bad thing. And we're gonna look at that here in a little bit more, why that's a bad thing. You know, when I first got here 25 years ago, I tested my soil and I had a 7.9. I tested it the next year, it was 7.8. I thought, wow, I'm adding all that sulfur, I'm adding all that pine straw, I'm adding all that peat moss, I'm doing the right thing. 14 years, I'll be down to the critical limit of 6.5. Soil sample last year was at 7.7. You are not going to change your pH levels that much. Now, if you were trying to raise your pH level, you could do that. But to lower your pH level is very hard. If you want to grow something like blueberries, I would recommend growing them in a container full of peat, because you're going to get the acid soil that you need of about a 4.5, and that's just something that you're never going to get here no matter what you do to it, or you're going to keep it. You'll never be able to sustain it. So let's look at a typical garden layout. Okay, today's March 15th. All right, we know we still have 7 more days that we could get frost based on what the Farmer's Almanac told us, but we're still going to go ahead. We're going to plant some corn, we're going to plant some squash, and we're going to plant some beans, because they're going to sit in the ground for probably a week, and then we won't have to worry about frost anymore in another week, and we'll be good to go. If we do get frost, we can cover our half a dozen peppers and our half a dozen tomatoes. We've already got our potatoes in the ground, our onions, our carrots, our radishes, our beets, and our turnips, because they can handle a little bit more cold. They went into the ground everywhere from December, January, and February. So let's skip ahead 60 days. Things are growing good on this side of the garden. See what I mean about drooping? This stuff's going to be in the garden for a little bit longer. We're already harvesting squash. The corn's getting close. We got silk. We got tassels. We got green tomatoes. We got tiny peppers. Doing well. But everything from beets on over, we got 7 rows that are now free. And we don't have anything growing anymore because we've harvested everything already. So what do? Plant some more radishes and cabbage? No. Look at your planting guide. You wouldn't want to plant radishes and cabbages right now. Maybe you'd want to plant some cantaloupe or some more squash or okra. That does well here in the heat. Does very well here in the heat. Maybe you don't want to plant anything at all. But I'd recommend putting in some kind of cover crop, either a rye, an Alban rye, a vetch, clover, because you want to keep that ground occupied. You don't want to leave just bare soil. You want to keep the ground occupied. And Alban rye is a very good trap crop. If you found that you've had nematodes in your garden, when you pull something out and the roots have them little knots on it, not beans, but the roots have those little knots on it, chances are it could be a nematode. If you ever cut one open, you could find a tiny little worm in there. Probably need a magnifying glass to see it. Well, let's say we put in some okra, we put in some cantaloupes, we put in another row of squash. So now, all we do is sit back and wait for things to grow, right? We got everything on a drip system, on timers. There's nothing left to do in the garden. Right? All right. Who has deer? Who doesn't have a fence around their garden and have deer in their garden? How about armadillos? Even though technically armadillos are pretty darn good. They tell you where your problems are. The trouble is, you can't train them to go between the rows. They go where they want. How about raccoons? Had anybody experience a raccoon in their corn? You know, you got this nice stand of corn, about 6 rows, 25 feet long. Raccoons come in one night. They don't take just one ear. They go through, knock them all down, scrape each ear, and then just leave everything there. And they actually eat about the amount of 2 or 3 ears. Or you're growing cantaloupe, and you find this nice little hole in their cantaloupe. Them little paws just went in there and you just cleaned out that cantaloupe. You still think you have a great cantaloupe. Rabbits? Anybody got a rabbit problem? Squirrels? Yeah. Now weeds. Weeds are another problem. Not because they're there, but they do take nutrients and they do take water from your garden. But these weeds, when we start talking about diseases, not this weed here, but they can harbor the same diseases like a powdery mildew that can get on your plants. So if you have those weeds off to the side of your garden or growing down the middle of your row, you could just be inviting more diseases to your garden. You know, having weeds in the garden is kind of like COVID. Once one thing gets it, it just kind of spreads. We have some other challenges too in the garden. Now we could talk about this for 6 hours. Now I chose 8 insects that I thought were the least friendly to our garden. Now I know aphids, they're no good, but aphids, at least they feed the ladybugs and the ladybug larvae. Red paper wasps, as long as you don't make one mad, they're pretty good pollinators in the garden. So, these guys here, harlequin bug up here at the top part. Everybody grow greens, lettuce, turnips. You get one in there, 2 weeks later you got 50. Another week later you got 500. Squash vine borer. Anybody experienced the wrath of a squash vine borer? Where it looks like stem growing up, they lay one egg at the base, and then all of a sudden that's just laid down. And there's all this frass that comes up. You guys know what frass is? Caterpillar poop. That's what frass is. And you see all these little gobs of stuff. They're in there. So now they're just tumbling around your whole zucchini plant, or your whole pumpkin, or your whole whatever, cucumber. The only squash they don't attack is the kind with solid vines, like a butternut squash. How about squash bugs? Anybody experienced squash bugs before in their squash? They like to hang around down in the, where everything comes up. If you take a container of water and pour it down, you can make them come up to the top of the leaves. And what you do is you pinch them. You can feel that pop in your fingers. And you know you got them. In the squash vine, the squash bug, when they lay their eggs, normally they lay them kind of like in the V of your squash plants on the underside of the leaves. It looks like about 30 to 50 little gold BBs there. So you just get rid of them. Spider mites. Anybody see spider mites in their garden or in their house plants as that goes? House plants. Usually spider mites, you don't even have spider mites until you're looking at your plant real close, and it looks like there's little dots just moving around and around and around. By then, it's a problem. Cabbage loopers. Everybody had grow cabbage in the fall or in the spring. Looks great one day, the next day you go out there and it's just full of holes. Cabbage loopers. Or how about you're growing your tomatoes, you just set them out, you just got them acclimated, you put your tomato plant out there or your pepper plant, and the next day you come over and it's sleeping. Somebody just chewed it off the ground. That's because that little baby just curled itself around it and ate it up all night long. So that's why they recommend you put down like a toilet paper roll or something around it, keep it away. Leaf order bugs, stink bugs. Anybody get those on your tomatoes? You see them on your tomatoes when they're growing? They don't really hurt anything, but what they do is they pierce your tomatoes, suck out some juice, put some spit in there. So, if you don't mind eating leaf order bug spit, those tomatoes are fine to eat. It's not going to hurt you. Cucumber beetles. Now, they have a striped version and a spotted version. I think in the clean gardens we see mostly spotted as opposed to striped. They carry viruses. We're going to talk about those guys, the viruses that they carry here in just a little bit. Anybody have any other favorite insects that they've experienced?
Grasshopper.
Grasshoppers. Oh my gosh. I think we got a different grasshopper for every day of the month in Texas. I mean, what I do with my grasshoppers is I feed them to my garden spiders. I catch them with a net. Because you know the big black and yellow garden spiders? I got two right now. I got Charlotte and I got Charlie. At first I thought Charlie was spelled L-I-E at the end. I thought it was a male spider because he's much smaller. I thought Charlotte was just keeping him around so if times got tough, she had a meal. Well, Charlie is actually ends in a Y, and she's gotten big just like Charlotte. And they've already developed their egg sacs, but they're still eating. So I usually feed them 3 grasshoppers a day each, because I got plenty of grasshoppers. And it's fun because you can just watch them run down there, spin it up, and then you can see in a day or two the little grasshopper corpses underneath the web. Makes me feel good. I'm doing my part. Because I figure 6 grasshoppers a day, I got to figure, well, half of them must be females. And they lay so many eggs. You know, I'm just slowly getting rid of the population, one by one by one. Okay, anything else going on in the garden?
Snails.
Snails. What do you do with snails?
Something from tender feed. Well, I squish them if
Yeah.
But when there's like 100 of them.
Snails aren't a problem right now, though.
No, not.
Not right now. But they were in May.
Early spring.
They were in May. But when we have snails, that means our reservoirs are full, so that's a good thing. Okay. Insects. We can talk about these all day long. This just scratches the surface. And I already forgot when. Sometime in October, I'm doing a class in Harker Heights about insects, friend or foe. To me, 16 October, these are all foe. They serve no purpose whatsoever. Grasshoppers serve no purpose whatsoever. Aphids. They are a meal for ladybugs and ladybug larvae, so they do serve a purpose. Red wasp, or paper wasp. They can sting you, and I just recently watched one, or a whole family of them devastate some monarch caterpillars. So I got rid of all my red wasp nets. Stuff it in. Okay, what else we got going on in the garden? How about diseases? Latineria. Very easy to identify. This is the tomato leaf. And if you look at it real close, it almost looks like when you look down on a tree that's been cut down a stump, you kind of see those concentric circles. It's a brown spot. It's got a yellow highlight. It's also called early blight. So what can we do about it? Well, we can mulch, which will help keep the spores from traveling. Limit your overhead watering. That's a problem. Crop rotation. If we plant, like I talked about earlier, if we planted tomatoes in row 1, we don't want to plant tomatoes in row 1 next year, but we don't want to plant potatoes, tomatillos, peppers, or tobacco. Anybody grow tobacco here? No? No. So, besides, and there are fungicides to treat this if it gets so bad. But if you're going to do a fungicide treatment, you're going to want to start early so you can get ahead of it. Powdery mildew. Anybody seen that on their squash before? Or their cucumbers? Kind of looks like somebody took some flour or powdered sugar and just sprinkled it on the leaves. Eventually these leaves will turn brown, they'll get all kind of papery feeling, and they'll just die. So what you can do for yourself is you can just trim that leaf off right now and dispose of that leaf. Again, crop rotation for the cucumbers. You don't want to plant melons behind your cucumbers the following year. Now I know what you're saying, well my garden space is only 10 by 10, I can only rotate so much. It's true. It's tough. There are fungicides available to treat this disease, and then weed control. A lot of the broadleaf weeds, such as prickly lettuce, can get powdery mildew. So you want to keep that under control and keep it away from the garden. Let's talk about its cousin, downy mildew. Yellow spots turn brown. And sometimes when you get this early on, you can pinch those little spots and you'll feel like little bits of water come out. They have a little bit of water in them. Again, limit your overhead watering. Try to plant early to beat the heat. Because this is a prevalent problem in the heat. Again, there are fungicides to treat for this. If you want to treat it early. This is too late. You're not going to fix it. And plant resistant varieties. Okay, resistant varieties. It's something we haven't talked about yet. We're going to talk about it here at the very end. But resistant varieties is a way you can combat against some of these things. Mosaic virus. Evil. The leaves you can see on, I guess I should flip them around, but anyway. At the beginning, the leaves are dimpled. Just like it has little dimples on them. And then as the disease progresses, you'll get the brown and the yellow. And the leaves, as it gets worse and worse, will cup down. The leaves will start to cup downward, which is very important because we're going to look at something else where the leaves cup upward. There are no fungicidal controls for this. Best thing you can do, destroy the plant. The nice thing about this disease is those cucumber beetles, those aphids, those spider mites, thrips, white flies can carry this virus from plant to plant. So that's why you want to get rid of this plant. If you're into seed saving, and you like to save your seeds from year to year, if you have a plant with mosaic virus, get rid of those seeds, because that'll transfer to the seeds. And all you're doing is propagating that over and over again. Yellow leaves. How many have seen yellow leaves and say, oh my God, what's going on with these yellow leaves? Okay, very top. Typically, iron deficiency, the veins stay green, but the leaf texture, surface turns yellow. More than likely, that's an iron deficiency. So planting those nails with that plant isn't going to make any difference because it's the wrong kind of iron. You're going to want to use a different kind of iron for your ferrous sulfate. Nitrogen deficiency. You can see here on the right leaf, kind of gets that deep green color, and then eventually it'll turn green. That'll be the whole leaf, vein and all. Magnesium deficiency, probably won't see it too often, but you have yellow leaves on the outside, and it stays on, it doesn't on the inside. Manganese usually comes up from the base of the leaf, start to get yellow, and kind of spreads out. Potassium deficiency, again, you probably won't see that much, but that is yellowing from the tip of the leaf inward. And then overwatering and underwatering. Overwatering, typically it affects new growth. The leaves will turn yellow and fall to the ground. Underwatering is typically older leaves. Again, they turn yellow, curl, fall off, and go to the ground. And it usually affects the lower leaves first. Who in here has a moisture meter? Okay, everybody raise their hand. Everybody raise your hand. Hold up one finger. Everybody in there has a moisture meter. Everybody has a moisture meter. Put it in there. And since we're talking about color of leaves, if you have purple leaves, which is common especially when you're starting seeds, and if you're using coconut coir, that means you have a phosphorus deficiency. Using coconut coir is notorious for having a phosphorus deficiency. Tomato leaf curl. It can be a virus or it could be stress. Again, if it's stress, it's probably water stress. Too much water, too little water. These leaves curl inward. The difference between the other one where they curl outward. Remember on mosaic virus, the leaves curl outward, leaves curl inward. And the vein, that central vein that goes down the middle of the leaf, will become distorted. So, too much water, too little water, check in the morning when you're going to check to see about watering. You know, don't check in the afternoon because your soil's going to be dry. And your leaves, it's going to look like this no matter what, especially right now. You know, if it's as hot outside as it is in this room right now, that's what they're going to look like. Again, aphids, whiteflies, thrips, cucumber beetles, any bug that sucks the plant moisture out will do this to your tomatoes. It will cause curl. Bacterial leaf spot. Didn't we see something with brown spots with yellow halos? But they were brown. Remember our alternaria at the very beginning? Bacterial leaf spot, basically the same thing, but the shapes, the brown spots are weird shaped. They're not circular. Highly contagious disease. So if you're sitting there in your tomato plant, you see this on your tomato plants, and you're reaching in there harvesting tomatoes, and then you work over to this pristine plant, and you're harvesting tomatoes, you just transferred bacterial leaf spot to that new plant. Same way with your peppers, the same way with anything else. 9 times out of 10, it's because of poor cultural controls based on the gardener that has done this. Avoid overhead watering. Mulch. Mulch is a big thing that'll help. It is treatable with the fungicide, but severely infected. You're not going to fix that. You're not going to come back from that because you already have. You can see here, leaf deterioration. You're not coming back from that. But if all you have is something like that, fungicide will get it. Okay. Evil stuff. Fusarium wilt. Bad stuff. Up until now, everything we talked about was either in the air, spore, or transferred by a bug. This is in the soil, so it's kind of invisible to you. You see the plant? The plant on the right is the same plant, same species as the plant on the left. The thing is, that plant that's still green was resistant to fusarium wilt. Big difference. Now, what happens, you go to remove this plant, you want to destroy it, you use a shovel and dig it out, and you say, well, let me put in a new tomato plant 10 feet over. You use that same shovel to dig a hole to put your new tomato plant in the ground. You just introduced fusarium wilt, a soil-borne disease, to the new hole. Plant-resistant varieties, you'll see an F, and we're going to look at a plant over there in a minute. There is no cure. Destroy the plant. But if you're going to destroy the plant, burn it, make sure you get rid of it. And if you use any tools to get rid of it, clean those tools. Yes, ma'am.
What do you do for the soil right there? Because it's still in the soil, right?
It's going to stay in the soil for a while. There has been some studies, not conclusive, but if you do some solarization, that'll help. But if you read one research article, it says yes, it does. You read another research article, it says no, it doesn't. Time. They say it stays in the ground 4 to 6 years. Okay. Damping off. Is anybody growing seeds in a container like this? Put them on the windowsill? In the greenhouse? Anywhere? And they're growing up nice, tall, and looking pretty, then all of a sudden the next morning you go out there and look at them and they're just laying over sleeping. Damping off. A couple reasons why. It looks like something just strangled them right at the base. Right at the base of the soil. A way to avoid that is using bottom heat and bottom water. Again, water from the bottom. Use heating pads at 75 to 85 degrees. Exercise your plants. I'm serious. Your plants are growing up here. Every day you look at them. Give them some exercise. Because that strengthens the stem. Or put a very low grade fan on them, and that way they're moving around. That strengthens the stem. Cleaning. If you used this pot to grow seeds last year, and you wash it out and you think they're good to go, if you didn't disinfect it with a 10% bleach solution for at least 10 minutes, you're just asking for bacteria to get in there. Or again, when your wife's not home, put it in the dishwasher on the top rack, and it does it for you. And if you do have the time, not everybody has the time because they're working, but if you have these sitting on the windowsill, if you have time on a nice sunny day, set them outside for an hour, then maybe 2 hours, and so on and so on, so you're building it up. Okay, what to look at on the seed packet. I believe this was a celebrity tomato. It's resistant to Alternaria, Fusarium wilt, nematodes, Streptophilium, which is normally not a problem down here in the south. That's a problem up in the northern states of Canada. Tomato mosaic virus, and verticillium wilt. We can talk about verticillium wilt because that is controllable with the fungicide. So you'll see all those little codes, like, I get good against F, N, T, V. So that's what all that means. If you're ever curious about what all that stuff means on a packet, you can basically Google it and look up what those codes mean, and it'll tell you what you're against. Unfortunately, they haven't developed seeds that are resistant against squash bugs, aphids, squash line borers, etc. But they are developing new seeds every year that help with different viruses, different strains. Okay, Texas A&M is, and this is on your sheet. You don't need to just sit there and try to take a picture of this. This is on your sheet. The disease handbook. If you want more information on those diseases we talked about, or if you see something in your garden that you, wait a minute, we didn't talk about that. It'll give you more information about diseases than you'll ever want. But the only way to tell what disease you really have is if you send it to the lab and they do an analysis. But as you get more comfortable and more experienced, your guesses will get better and you'll say, that's mosaic virus. I know that. Now, there's a theme against all those diseases I showed. Mulch, limit your overhead watering, and practice good cultural controls. Don't be your own worst enemy and spread the diseases yourself. You know what you think? Why would I want to plant a vegetable garden after seeing all that? Well, just think of all the money you're going to save. Look how much cheaper it is to have a vegetable garden as opposed to just walking an HEB. No, you're not doing it for cost. You're going to spend a lot more money growing them. But you're going to grow that perfect, most tasteful tomato, and you're going to be able to get the variety that you want. That's why you do it. Spring versus fall gardening, or fall versus spring gardening. Basically, the mechanics are the same. You're going to add organic material, you're going to fertilize, you're going to weed, you're going to watch for insects. Now, when we talk about spring, we're talking February, March time. When we're talking fall gardening, believe it or not, we're talking July and August. Because you figure 15th of July, 90 days later, is already 15 October. So you're already within 30 days of your first frost. There are some differences. In the spring, obviously, you're fighting cold and wind. And you want to offer protection against cold and wind. If you use plastic, by all means, before you go to work, take that plastic off, because chances are, if it's the 10th of March, it's probably going to be 70 degrees by noon. And what's that plastic going to do? It's going to look like you have Fusarium wilt on your plants because it's just going to eat them alive. Fall temperatures warm slowly, but they get there. Normally when you're planting your potatoes in February, you're about 55 degrees. By early March, we're already up, we're pushing 60, 65, 70 degrees, depends on what the year is. Sometimes, when you have transplants, you don't want to put them out right away. Because if you go into Lowe's or Walmart or Bonnie's Nursery or wherever, chances are they've been protected. So what you're going to want to do is acclimate them. Take them in, take them out. Give them so much sunlight, so much, bring them in at night. Also, if you bought your transplants, say, the middle of February, those little 1-inch, 1.5-inch pots, you might have to up pot them to a 4-inch pot. I've up potted many times up to a gallon of pot, just before I put them in the ground. That's something that you're gonna just have to do, because you don't wanna take a chance on the cold. Hail. Somebody had hail. Who just talked about hail? Tornadoes. Who's some example? Tornadoes. But the days are getting longer, so that's a good thing. Fall, this thing right here, this spun web, is like a miracle. Keeps the insects off, keeps the temperatures about 15 degrees cooler in there. And the way it's designed, you don't have to worry about taking it off. It's not like plastic. So this is a good thing when we're talking about planting our fall garden in August, when it's 100 degrees. It's a good thing, and you can buy that at a variety of places. This one is just a photo from Johnny Seeds. I'm not advocating for Johnny Seeds by any means. Might have to do a lot more water, add a lot more layers of mulch because of the heat you're trying to combat. But you're kind of on a quick turnaround, because you basically have 90, maybe 110 days where you're working with. Again, transplant activation. You've grown your transplants, or you've picked them up at Lowe's or your favorite big box store. You don't want to put them in the ground and let Mother Nature cook them at 100 degrees for 8 to 10 hours a day, because those big box stores have protected them. And lots of times they're in air conditioning. You don't have air conditioning, you know. Somebody have air conditioning in the garden? No? I didn't think so. So you're going to want to acclimate them on the fall side too, because you want them to get used to those 100 degrees. And again, you might have to do some uppotting. Early frost. Where I live, down by the Lampasas River, I guarantee you I will see frost before December or November 11th. It's just the way it is. But if you're using protecting against frost, again, remove your plastic. Seed availability. Lots of times in the fall, it's hard to find the seeds that you want. So when you order your seeds in January or maybe in December of the year before from your favorite seed catalog, you want to grow or order your fall vegetable seeds at the same time. Days are getting shorter, and a lot of people claim that the starch turns to sugar a lot quicker, especially on your crops like carrots and your cabbage, and you have a lot sweeter product.
Dave, are there different seeds for spring and for fall? Or can you
It
use
depends
the
on
same
what
ones?
you're growing. Yes.
Oh.
Yes. Now, your cabbage that you're planting in the spring
Uh-huh.
is the same as you would in the fall. Your carrots would be the same. Your turnips, your beets, everything's the same. But some things would be different. Some varieties of beets, some varieties of greens, some varieties of lettuce do better in the fall than they do in the beginning of the year. Yes, sir.
If you're trying to grow tomatoes for a fall crop, an early maturing variety will probably give you more tomatoes than
Yes.
a late maturing.
60 days. 60 days. And if you want to learn how to propagate your tomatoes so you never have to plant another tomato seed or another transplant again, we're going to talk about propagation in here September 14th. And we're going to propagate some tomato plants. I haven't grown a tomato seed or a transplant. Well, 2021 I lost them all because my greenhouse, when we lost power, I lost everything. But I haven't planted a new seed, a tomato seed, or a transplant since 2022. Yes, sir.
Where's the best place to buy transplants the middle of March?
I like Bonnie's Nursery in Waco.
How about the Bell County Master Gardener Association Plant Center?
That's true, if we have them. If we have them, yes. But No, I don't buy it before. I just propagate it. Because what tomato plant will regrow it in 2 weeks. And that way you always have, if you have that favorite plant that grew the best tomatoes that you've always had, you got about a 99% chance of getting the same tomato over and over and over again. Yes, sir.
What's your favorite medium for propagation?
I use a mixture of half and half perlite and vermiculite. And every once in a while, if I feel like it, I'll take a handful of sand and throw in there just because. But normally it's just half and half. All right. Now, good place. Some closing thoughts. Compost, mulch, drip irrigation. Avoid overhead watering. Spraying the top of your plants. This leads to other problems. Compost. It helps release nutrients into the soil. It reduces, as you're walking on your garden or you're rototilling your garden, it's compact. If you're adding compost, organic materials, maybe you don't want to do just compost, but you can buy manures that are treated, or you can put rabbit manure directly on there and it will burn. Turning it over will help reduce that compaction. You're adding to your microbiome. It's in the ground. You ever dig up your soil and see these little white strand things hanging around? It's a mycorrhizal fungus. That's a good thing. If you have that, that's a good thing. And you do increase your water and nutrient capacity by using compost. Mulch. Reduces water needs by 30%. Not sure how that was measured, but that is in the Master Gardener Handbook. Deters weeds if you put enough mulch there. Now, if you're trying to deter nutsedge, then I don't think you can make it 10 feet tall. It's going to find its way through it. It does. It helps reduce moisture evaporation. And it does provide your soil shade from the sun. The same way in early spring, if you have your soil mulched, it keeps the heat in, so it keeps it warmer. Drip irrigation, 90% effective. And with drip irrigation, you are putting water exactly where you want it. Now, we're not even going to talk about the conservation aspect of it. I mean, the reservoirs are full right now. Just saw it on the news last night. Belton and Stillhouse are still at 100%. That's not always going to be the case. Reduces runoff. If you're looking for a good place to buy compost that is monitored by TEC2, that is tested on a weekly basis, so you can get it at the regional compost facility, south of Plain on 195, at the transfer station. Now, if you go out FM 93, and you see they have compost there too at the treatment facility, that is not tested by TEC2. You don't know what's in there.
Can you read that one more time?
Regional compost facility. Their phone number is 254 501 3206. They have mulch. They have compost. They sell it by the pickup load, the trailer load, and they now sell it by the bag. You won't pick up any E. coli because they get tested weekly. And you can see them there almost every time you go there, they're moving the piles. And you can just see the smoke come off it.
What was that?
It's at the transfer station in Killeen, south of 195, just almost across from the Veterans Cemetery.
Question, when you get it home, what do you think about those giant brown tarps that you have to cover over?
I keep mine covered. Keeps the weeds out. Keeps the armadillos from digging in it.
I have another question here in the back.
Yes.
What kind of mulch are you buying at the store?
hardwood mulch, my Austin wood. Comes in those green bags. Lots of times in the spring of the year, you'll see them at gas stations. But if you don't want to wait till the spring of the year, you can go down to their Hutto facility and you can buy it in bulk or you can buy it by the bag. The mulch at the regional compost facility, sometimes the mulch is size of logs, something you want to burn in your fireplace. Because they do one quick grind on it. They don't do some of the stuff they bag up in plastic bags. They don't do a very definitive grind on it.
Some of the hardwood is in color. Now, is that a problem?
I can't hear you.
That hardwood, say down at some of the stores are in color, red and black and brown.
You don't want color. You want natural mulch. You don't want a decorative mulch. You want natural.
Thank you.
The stuff in the green bag is a hardwood mulch that has not been colored. And it's clean. Okay. Everybody has in front of them, hopefully. If not, you can pick it up on the way out. A reference sheet. On that sheet is the soil testing lab. You can use the QR code in the plant disease handbook. You can download that. The majority of my references for tonight's class was from Texas A&M University, which is the top one. That is our sponsoring land-grant university. Another good school is Clemson. They have a lot of good information. Mississippi State, University of Georgia, University of California, all have good information. The North Carolina State, another good information, and they're all basically on the same plateau as we are, so they have some of the same weather challenges that we have. Now you'll see Oklahoma State's on there. There's one on there, Washington State University. You think, why would we want Washington State on there? Well, Washington State is the home. They are the original university that sponsored the first Master Gardener class in 1972. It all started out there. And Washington State University is on the eastern side, and their climate in the summer is just like ours here. In the winter, it's very cold. And then there's one on there that's not a university, but they have been doing horticulture longer than any other university in the United States, and that's the Royal Horticultural Society in England. I think they started in 1806 or 1804. So, a lot of the challenges they have, we don't have, because we don't have the rain and the cold and the damp. But they have a lot of good information on their website if you're interested in looking. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
Shade cloth. I put shade cloth up to kind of stop some of the hard sunlight.
Yes.
When do you recommend taking that down?
I wouldn't take it down until I got below 90 degrees during the day. Consistently. What, do you know what percent shade cloth they're using?
I think it was a 20%.
Yeah, that's kind of on the shy side, but it all helps. So, just a minute.
On my watermelons, they're growing like crazy, and I go out there and I find some that have reversed. What am I doing wrong on those?
You're not doing anything wrong. Said overhead watering.
Oh, yeah. But it's so easy to turn that sprinkler on and walk off.
No. A lot of it is just the heat of the day.
Is it
Yeah, the heat. But when are you watering?
early in the morning, and then when the sun comes up, I turn off the water.
Yeah, that's the best time to water.
She also has raccoons.
Yeah, well, that's a problem. So, but yeah, overhead watering, you can eliminate it, you're good, but it's just heat. You know, it gets hot inside, and that hot air from inside that watermelon or cantaloupe or even squash, it's got to go someplace. Yes, ma'am.
What percent shade cloth do you recommend?
I would do at least 40%. to 60%.
Wow.
Depends on what you can get. You know, when it's 100 degrees out plus for 8 hours a day or longer, if you can give it some shade, you're still getting plenty of sunlight. So,
What do you think about pine needles or?
pine needles are great. They're the best mulch you can use because as they deteriorate, they're not adding pH to your soil. I don't want to say they're reducing the pH in your soil, but it's the best you can do. Pine needles from East Texas. Well, wherever they're coming from, I don't know. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
You said you added like maybe a handful of sand. What kind of sand did you use?
I use place sand because it's readily available. And I don't always do that. I just do that sometimes because that's the way I used to do propagation with place sand. And I think it's just a throwback to what I used to do. Lots of times on this seedless mix, I put some place sand in there, just because. That's it? Okay. You got a raffle?
Thank you, Dave. We're going to give away a couple of prizes.